All right, ready to dive deep into the Varna system. Early Vedic society. Fascinating stuff.
Yeah, always sparks debate, doesn't it?
And you've given me some great material for this deep dive. We've got excerpts from the Rig Veda,
Oh, nice.
some recent archaeological studies, even a few accounts from, like, British colonial times about the system.
Wow.
Look, we have a time machine, right?
Yeah, it really is.
So we're going to go back and,
Our mission today.
yeah, what's our mission?
I think it's to understand not just what this Varna system was, but how it came about.
Right.
In early Vedic society, right, we're talking like 1500 to 1000 BCE.
Because I think most people have heard about the caste system.
Yeah.
But the Varna system is like the root, the ancestor,
The OG.
that we don't always kind of examine on its own.
Yeah, and some scholars even argue that, to understand India, to understand how they view hierarchy and duty today, you got to go back to the Varna system.
It's crucial. So, okay, super quick refresher. If anyone needs it, we've got the four main groups in the Varna system. Brahmanas, the priests, scholars, right. Kshatriyas, warriors, rulers. Then we've got the Vaishyas.
Merchants, farmers, traders.
And lastly, Shudras, the laborers. But, okay, how did this whole division even happen in the first place?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the debate gets really interesting. One theory, and this is based on some of the archaeological evidence that you've given me.
Okay.
It was gradual. Like, it was tied to, as society got more complex in the early Vedic period, different groups, they started specializing in certain tasks, certain jobs.
They got good at their thing, right?
They got good at their thing, and over time, that morphed into this more kind of rigid hierarchy.
Makes sense to me. You start with the blacksmith who's just like really, really good at blacksmithing.
Yeah, he's the best.
And then, okay, now his kids, they're all blacksmiths, their kids. All of a sudden, you have a hereditary profession.
Exactly. And it's tied to social status.
Yeah, tied to status. But, okay, then you have, like, the flip side of that argument, right?
Right. There's always the other side of the coin.
The people who say, no. This wasn't just about, like, getting good at a job. It was about control.
Deliberate.
Yeah.
A power move.
Power move.
By certain groups. And this draws heavily on how the Varna system is actually described in the Rig Veda itself.
Okay.
I mean, there's that famous hymn. It describes the four Varnas as, like, emerging from the body of this primordial being, Purusha.
I've heard of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Brahmanas from the head, Kshatriyas from the arms,
Okay.
Vaishyas from the thighs, Shudras from the feet.
Okay. That's an image.
That's an image.
Yeah.
Right?
Like, I'm never going to forget that.
Nice.
So, okay, the hierarchy then it's like built in.
Baked in.
Divinely ordained.
Divinely ordained from the very beginning.
Right.
And that's the point, right? Because if you view social order, if everyone views social order as, like, divinely mandated, it's much harder to question.
Right. It's much hard to go against it.
To challenge it.
It's really
Clever.
clever.
But also kind of ruthless when you think about it.
Yeah. But, I mean, our sources, especially all these scholarly articles, it's not like either. Right?
Yeah, it's not black and white. It's very much both hands.
Both.
Most modern scholars say it was probably a combination of factors.
Okay, so practical stuff, people getting good at jobs, and then
It laid the foundation, yeah. And then
religion comes in.
religious ideology steps in to, like, really solidify.
To bake it in even more.
To bake it in. Make
Yeah.
it this rigid, divinely sanctioned thing.
Okay, pragmatism and power consolidation.
Classic combo.
Classic combo, right?
Sounds kind of familiar, doesn't it?
Human history, maybe. But what's interesting to me is, like, this system, it didn't just, like, appear, and then everyone's like, okay, we live with it now.
No. It was
Like that.
actively reinforced.
Yeah.
Through all sorts of things. Through ritual.
Through tradition.
Tradition woven into everyday life.
That's what I want to get into.
Okay.
Because the outline mentions, like, ritual and tradition.
Yeah.
And for our listeners, I think that's where it's going to get really vivid. Right?
It brings it to life.
It's one thing to be like, okay, 4 groups, got it. It's another to imagine how this actually played out.
In ancient India.
Yeah. So what do we have?
Okay, well, first of all, the archaeology becomes really important here because they've uncovered, for example, separate burial grounds for different Varnas.
Wow. So like segregation, but
Physical reality.
physical reality.
Yeah. And we also see things like, differences in pottery styles, housing structures,
So like wealth.
different levels of wealth, access to resources.
It's like we can go beyond just the texts, you know? We can look at a piece of pottery from 3,000 years ago and be like, okay, who used this?
Right. And what did it mean?
What was their life like?
Where did they fit? And remember that idea of ritual purity that we touched on earlier?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Well, it wasn't just like this abstract idea.
Right.
It was deeply ingrained in everyday practices.
Okay, so let me just jump in here for a sec.
Yeah.
Because I think ritual purity, that's a concept that it can be kind of hard to wrap your head around.
For modern audiences, for sure.
Yeah. So what are we even talking about?
Okay, think of it like spiritual hygiene.
Okay.
Right? So a way to like maintain cosmic order.
So it's not about like being dirty.
No.
It's about maintaining like
The spiritual order.
order and certain activities they were believed to be polluting, like handling a corpse or
certain bodily fluids, even just interacting with people from lower Varnas.
yeah, and then this impurity, it could spread, right?
It could spread and disrupt the balance of society as a whole.
Wow.
So it's like, you got to keep everything in its place.
Keep it all in order. But the burden of purity seems to have fallen, like, especially on the lower Varnas.
Yeah, especially the Shudras.
Yeah.
And it's a system that inherently reinforces the hierarchy.
Right.
The Brahmanas, right, the priests, scholars, they're inherently pure. But the Shudras, who are associated with, manual labor,
The dirty jobs.
often viewed as inherently polluting.
So not just a concept. It, like, had real consequences.
Absolutely. It dictated who you could marry,
Okay.
what jobs you could hold, even where you could live.
Really?
Oh, yeah. We even have records of specific areas within villages being designated for certain castes,
Oh.
further reinforcing that social segregation.
So it's like baked into society from the very beginning.
Yeah, a blueprint for inequality.
But it's crazy how resilient, how strong this system was and is, right?
I know.
We're talking thousands of years.
And echoes of it today.
Yeah. So that's what we'll dig into next time.
Yeah, how it evolved, how it shaped Indian society.
And how do we even grapple with this legacy?
That's the big question. Stay tuned. It gets even more interesting, I promise.
Yeah. Back again, digging deeper into this Varna system.
Yeah, last time we were talking about its origins, right? Those big debates, did it just kind of happen or was it deliberate?
Power move.
Total power move, right?
Man.
And how they use that idea of ritual purity.
Yeah, to really solidify.
Bake it into the system.
Yeah. And it's that reinforcement that I want to get into more today.
Yeah, because it's key, I think, to understanding how the system lasted so long.
Because I think it's easy to look back and be like, oh, that's just some old weird system.
Like some abstract concept.
Yeah, it doesn't like affect us now.
Yeah.
But for the people living in early Vedic society.
Right. This was their reality. This was their daily experience.
Yeah, this is how life worked.
Yeah, and this is where the source material you gave me, particularly those excerpts from the Dharma Shastras
Okay.
and the Griha Sutras, those ancient texts that outline like social and religious duties.
Right.
They give us this incredible glimpse into how the Varna system actually played out in real life.
Give me an example.
All right, let's talk marriage.
Okay.
Huge in the Griha Sutras, right? All the details.
Yeah.
Marriage wasn't just, like, oh, you love each other, you get hitched. It was a sacrament.
Okay.
It was about upholding social and cosmic order. And guess what?
Right.
Marrying outside your Varna, taboo.
Yeah.
Absolutely taboo.
Not like your parents are going to be mad.
Oh, no.
Like a big no-no.
This was a transgression against the natural order.
Okay.
Like these texts, they're very, very clear. You do that, you disrupt the purity of lineages. You could even face like karmic consequences.
Oh, wow.
They even had specific rituals for purifying the children if you did have kids from these quote-unquote mixed marriages.
So the system is like built to like keep itself going.
Self-perpetuating at the most intimate level.
Even who you can marry.
Your spouse, your family lineage, it all went back to your Varna.
For birth. That's crazy. So it wasn't just marriage though, right?
Oh, no.
Like other parts of life.
Birth ceremonies, initiation rites, funerals, all of it structured around your Varna.
So different for each group.
Different rites, different prayers, different expectations, all depending on your place in the hierarchy.
Like living in different worlds almost.
In a way.
Yeah. Okay, and remember those archaeological studies we mentioned?
Yeah.
So some of them show that different Varnas had like different levels of education.
Oh, yeah. This is where it gets, well, even more interesting.
Yeah.
Right. The Brahmanas, they're the priests, the scholars. They're the keepers of the knowledge.
Down at the top. Makes sense.
Makes sense, right.
Right.
And these texts, they actually outline specific education paths for each Varna. Brahmanas, only ones allowed to study the Vedas.
The Vedas, right.
Yeah, Kshatriyas, they got training in warfare,
Okay, the warriors.
statecraft, Vaishyas, trade and agriculture.
Okay, so what about the Shudras? Like, what were they taught?
That's the thing. The texts, they're pretty clear. The Shudras weren't meant for formal education.
Oh, wow.
Their role to serve, to provide manual labor, support the other Varnas.
So keeping them uneducated.
Yeah, and subservient.
Yeah, that's,
It raises some serious questions about this system, about its legacy.
yeah, for sure. It's like designed for inequality, isn't it?
That's one way to put it. But, we also have these accounts from British writers.
Oh, yeah, from like the colonial period.
They're encountering the Varna system.
It's like looking in from the outside.
It's fascinating, right? You see your own culture reflected back at you in a way.
Yeah, and what did they make of it, the British?
Well, they were fascinated, of course, trying to make sense of this ancient civilization and this Varna system with its, rigid hierarchy. It was something they both admired and kind of were horrified by.
I can see that. Like their own society had social order, but
Yeah.
they also had these ideas about equality, individual liberty.
Enlightenment values clashing with this ancient system. And their reactions were all over the map. Some, they saw it as a testament to India's wisdom, like this system that's kept things stable for centuries.
Mm-hmm.
They even compared it to, like, the European feudal system, lords and serfs.
Trying to fit it into what they knew, I guess.
Yeah, finding a framework they understood, even if it wasn't a perfect fit.
Right, but then some were just appalled.
Absolutely. They saw the inequality, the oppression, especially the treatment of the Shudras, and even worse, the untouchables.
Right.
Who were even further down in this caste system that had kind of evolved out of the Varna framework.
So did they try to change it, the British?
That's a complicated one. They're
Yeah.
walking this tightrope, right?
Yeah.
Trying to maintain control, but also at least appear to respect local customs.
Right, right.
And sometimes, unintentionally, they actually ended up reinforcing the Varna hierarchy. Well, they would use those upper caste elites to collect taxes, maintain order. It just further consolidated power within those groups.
So maybe not on purpose, but they weren't exactly helping.
Yeah, maybe a lack of awareness of the complexities, the consequences. But, it's important to remember, the British, they weren't all the same. Some were reformers. They really wanted to dismantle it. Others, they saw it as a tool, a way to keep their own power. But it's impossible to separate British colonialism from how the Varna system evolved, how it transformed into the more complex caste system we see today.
That's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, a story for another time.
Okay, so we've explored these ancient origins, the rituals, the British encounter.
We've covered a lot of ground.
But, the story's not over, right?
No.
We need to talk about how this ancient system continues to shape India today.
Yeah, and that's what we'll tackle next time.
Right, the final part of our deep dive.
It's a topic that's both fascinating and challenging. I'm ready to get into it when you are.
All right, final part of our deep dive into this Varna system. We've covered a lot of ground, right?
Yeah, we went all the way back to the beginning.
The origins, Vedic society, rituals, even how the British saw it all.
A whirlwind tour through history.
But it's not just history, is it?
No, not at all. The biggest question, I think, is how this ancient system is still shaping India today.
Because it'd be easy to think, oh, that was like way back when. Doesn't
Right.
matter now.
Right, a relic of the past. But that would be a mistake, I think.
Yeah.
The legacy of the Varna system, it's woven into Indian society.
In ways we can see and ways we can't.
Exactly, both. So how about we unpack this legacy a bit?
Yeah, let's do it. What are some tangible ways we still see this Varna system, and I guess the caste system that came out of it, impacting India?
Well, I think one of the most striking examples is, sadly, that caste-based discrimination is still around.
Really?
Yeah, even with all the legal reforms and activism.
I know there are laws.
There are, but we still see instances of untouchability, especially in rural areas where those old traditions are really strong.
That's awful. To think that in this day and age, people are still being treated so badly just because of their caste.
It's a real tragedy. And it's not just about that kind of overt discrimination either. The caste system has created these huge economic gaps.
How so?
Well, certain castes, they were historically associated with specific jobs, and that pattern hasn't totally gone away.
Right, right. We were talking about how the Shudras back in the Vedic period were pretty much stuck doing manual labor.
Exactly, and it's still happening. Even now, you see a lot of Dalits, those who were formerly called untouchables.
Right.
They're doing those difficult, sometimes dangerous jobs. Getting access to education to those higher paying professions, it's still a real struggle for many.
It's like the past is still holding people back.
It's true. These systems of oppression, they can get embedded so deeply, it's hard to break free.
So it's not just about jobs and money.
No, caste identity, it affects everything. Social interactions, who you marry, even politics.
Wow. So even though it's like officially gone, the caste system still has this huge influence.
A long shadow. So then how do we deal with this legacy? How do we get rid of a system that's been around for thousands of years?
That's a big question. But, I mean, our sources, they do mention some people who are trying to change things, right?
They do. There are social reformers, activists fighting hard for equality.
Like who?
Well, the Dalit rights movement has been really powerful, raising awareness, pushing for new laws.
Mm,
And we're also seeing more and more Dalit intellectuals, artists, entrepreneurs breaking those barriers, changing the narrative.
that's encouraging.
Yeah.
So things are changing, even if it's slow.
Slowly but surely, I think. And
Yeah.
education is a big part of it too, right?
Yeah.
If we can teach younger generations about the history of the caste system, about all the harm it's done,
They can understand?
yeah, build empathy, and then they can be the ones to really push for change.
To build a better future.
Mhm.
So I guess if there's one thing we can take away from this whole deep dive into the Varna system, it's that history matters.
Absolutely. It's not just some story in a book. It's alive. It's affecting us right now.
Yeah, in good ways and bad. And the more we understand it, the more we can learn from it, the better we can make things.
Yeah. I think so. We can fight the injustice and work towards a more equal world for everyone. Well, we started with the ancient Varna system, and now we've come all the way to modern India.
Rituals, hierarchies, it's been a journey, a complicated one.
It has. Full of contradictions, but hopefully it's made you think.
Yeah, and made you want to keep learning about the world, about history, about how we can all make a difference. So thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
We'll see you next time.